Call to order.
Hey, think about it. Didn't we have this conversation last night? Yeah, I didn't want to be president.
Can I now?
Yep, please.
All right, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6:33. Roll call, please.
Haas,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Comitas, Landers,
Here.
Rapp,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I have a motion to approve our regular meeting agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Kane,
Yeah.
Comitas, Landers,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Haas.
All right. Any visitors or?
So I did have a couple of communications from different people in support of a solar project. I did have one gentleman who actually has experience in the solar energy industry, who's a parent of ours, and so he was going to try to be here. So maybe if he does make it in a little bit later, have the grace to see what he has
Yeah.
to say. If that'll be okay with everybody.
Mhm, definitely.
Okay.
He
Awesome.
just might not have been able to find parking.
Right. It's a bit of a parking mess out there.
Yes.
Came down the street last night.
Okay,
Yep.
nothing else. Alrighty, then I need a motion for our consent agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the disposition of minutes for October 2022, payment of the bills, district treasurer's report, in-person activity fund report, cafeteria report, and personnel report.
Second?
Second.
Landers,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Haas,
Yes.
Kane.
Yep. Alright, informational items, any FOIA requests?
No FOIA request this one.
Awesome. Alright, then 6.2, administrative reports.
Yeah, before we have our presenters on, I just wanted to give you kind of a little visual. So if you'll look up here, this is actually the outside southeast corner of the, I'm going to call it the new addition at Lincoln. And so if you'll notice that these bricks are kind of coming loose. That's the wrong way to say it. They're starting to stick out. And so they aren't loose yet. But obviously, they're right there at the playground. They're 20 feet up in the air. You don't want anything falling.
Nope.
Right? And so we've actually gone ahead with having having our architect in, brought in an engineer, the same group, Narvik, that did the front ramp over at Blackstone. They're already lined up the first week in December. It's not an immediate danger, otherwise you'd have heard about it and we'd have playgrounds roped off. But they don't want it to go through another thawing season, and so they're going to try to get to it before winter sets in and nothing can get behind it. While they're there, they'll actually cut some additional expansion joints in, so this won't be a problem moving forward. But just wanted to have that on your radar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Superintendent?
Yeah,
report?
and so then we're gonna go to, we have Stacy Kelly here,
Mm-hmm.
and she is going to chat with us a little bit about, some things that are going on with her. Is that right? Nope, I hit the wrong button. Hang on, sorry.
All right. So, I'm here to tell you a little bit about a program that we have at Blackstone that I'm super, super proud of. That our students and staff, sorry, am I standing right now? I'm trying to stand out of the way. We started this a few years ago. We started a kindness program, and we wanted to come up with a slogan. There's all kinds out there with kindness. And our committee chose Kindness Begins With Me. So, our first year, it was COVID. We kind of just rolled it out slow, and we couldn't do a lot of the things that we wanted to do when we envisioned this and planned for it for a year or two. So we kind of started slow, and we've really picked up. So we chose the slogan, "Kindness begins with me," and if you walk through the building, you will see that slogan on our walls, in our cafeteria, in our classrooms, and we have that all around. So we're really pushing kindness at school. We're pushing kindness at home. We're pushing kindness in a safe way out in the community, like, or in public, like if you hold the door open for somebody, you know, not unsafe things. So I'm just going to share with you today a few of the things that we do to teach this. All of our teachers are teaching it. We're trying to use the same language. You hear kindness begins with me. I don't know how many times a day that I hear it from all staff, including like custodians, cooks, teachers, everybody. So we purchased a bunch of books. These are just a sample of some of them, and they're in the media center. We have a few sets of each one. And these are paperbacks. They're not for the students to check out, although there are quite a few kindness books in there. But this is part of our kindness curriculum, and the teachers will check these out at least once a week. They'll take one book a week or more. Most of them take more. And read that to the students. Just a variety of fun ways to teach about kindness. So that's part of their curriculum. We have a big banner that hangs in the hallway down by the cafeteria that students walk by every day, going to lunch, going to PE and back. And it's Be the Eye and Kind. And we have monthly Kind Kid winners, and teachers nominate one student from their class every month. And then that student, as you can see, they're the Eye and Kind. They stand there and I take their picture. We talk about being the eye and kind and what it means. They get a certificate, they get a prize, they get their picture on Facebook, they get recognized in the newspaper with their names, not each of their individual pictures. So they get super, super excited about that. I've caught kids walking back or like going to the bathroom, and they'll just jump in there and they go, "I'm gonna be the eye and kind today." You know, so not necessarily just winning that award once a month, but kids are looking at that all the time, and it's a great visual reminder. It's a pretty big banner, actually. So, daily recognition that we do, you can see the chains in the hallway, and those are kindness strips. And when we first started, there's a really big bulletin board outside the office, and the kids would, and we had kindness, throw kindness like confetti, and the kids could earn a piece of confetti when they were caught doing something kind, and they'd bring it down and put it in a basket, and every day somebody would staple them all up there, and it was so full. Last Christmas, my parents came to me and said, "You know what, we thought it'd be really cool if we did like a red and green kindness chain as a visual to go down the hallway." Well, it took off, and they loved it. And it was a great visual, and it brightened up the hallways a lot, too. So we continued that for the rest of the year, and we just used a variety of colors, and we did it again this year. And so we have the one all the way to the right is in first grade, and then the one all the way to the left is going down the kindergarten hall, and the kindergarten one's kind of in the middle, swung around to the next hallway as well, because it's getting bigger. Our committee talked at the beginning of the year. We're like, do we switch it out halfway through the year? Do we take it down every trimester? We said we're going to leave it up for as long as we can and see if it becomes a problem. We hope it does, and we run out of space. So, the snowman and the snowflake, though, in case you're wondering what those are, we've talked about doing something different for December and January. We're going to go back to that bulletin board by the office, and kids are going to be able to earn a snowflake or a snowman, and we're going to decorate the front board for winter. And we have a theme or a saying something like "Snow Much Kindness at Blackstone" or something like that. So we are working on that. So one of the things we talked about is we really wanted to reach out and do kind things for others, and we talked about it didn't always mean buying something for somebody. So the committee made up a list of different ideas of places in the community that we could do kind things for. These are just a few of them. Obviously, Ivar's not in Mendota, but they're close by. PADS is not in Mendota, but they're close by. And they, help people from Mendota as well. So that's just a short list. And then we've had a couple classes do something already. Mrs. Klein's first graders, here's a picture and some of their stuff. For Fire Prevention Week, they made a thank you book, and they brought snacks to the fire department for them to enjoy and thank them for their service to our community. Parents are donating snacks or sending in things if we need them. The teachers are just asking them. The next one was Veterans Day. This is Mrs. Michael Ossick's class. They made books, and then they made thank you cards for the veterans at the Mendota VFW, and they also, it's kind of hard to see in there, but on that table there are a bunch of snacks in there too. So that was delivered to the VFW on November 11th. I don't have a picture, but Ms. Wilhelm's group is currently working on gathering things for pads for the winter for the homeless shelter. So lots of good things going on. And then one of our biggest last projects, World Kindness Day, is November 13th. And last year we collected food for the food pantry in Mendota. And the food pantry always says, you know, money goes a long ways there too, because they can buy things in bulk and so much cheaper. So we did a campaign. Instead of collecting food, we put change jars in every classroom, and we did a coins for kindness. So kids could bring in coins, staff could bring in coins. You know, we talked that you don't have to, you need to get permission. If you bring in a quarter, that's great, you're helping others. It didn't have to be a lot of money. So I was floored when I took the money to the bank. How much do you think we collected? You know, because you wrote the check. You can't guess.
$1,000.
No, that would have been nice.
Oh,
See, I was like, that's the trouble with guessing. No. So my
That's a lot
goal,
of
I was
coins.
thinking if we could get $200, that would be fantastic and help the food pantry. They got $550.
That's pretty good.
That
That'd be
was
really
awesome. So I didn't tell the food pantry we were doing it. Normally when we collect food, I will call them and say, hey, what are some things you need? And then we'll put that out to parents and say, you know, if you can, they really need cereal or they really need this or that. And so I called her and I said, hey, I have a check here. And she came and she was floored at the amount of money that they collected. So we had a big celebration at Blackstone to celebrate their kind deed, and talked about how their donations will help those in need in their own community to get food. So super excited about that. The board behind them, that's the one we're going to take down and do the snowflakes and snowmen on. So lots of kind things going on. We have lots of plans for the rest of the year, but that's just kind of an overview of what we do and what we're, you know, planning, and we just want to do a lot of kind things for the community. Even if it's, you know, Crossing Guard Day, Bus Driver Appreciation Week, the police department will do something for just different places in our community, just to show our kids how to be kind.
I've
Everybody.
had several districts do something similar, and with the kindness thing, and the thing that really works out so well. Not only is it a great message, and you know, a part of that piece with kids, but so many other things scale off of being kind. You know, whether it's you know responsibility, or just all of the different little positive attributes, they all fit neatly in that kind of umbrella, and so it's a great vehicle.
Yep. Do you have any questions? Or ideas? Do you think of anything
Sounds
that
like you guys
anybody in
have
the
a lot of
community?
great ideas.
I don't think you need our help. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Guy.
Sorry, everybody. Thought it was like 5 when Brad called. It's like 6:30.
Hey, Kristen told me yesterday on the ride home that she really wanted to be the president one meeting, so there you go.
Perfect.
I did not.
That never happened.
I never wanted to do it.
I'm gonna step back for a minute. I do apologize. I have a cold I have a cold tonight, but I'll assure you I did my COVID testing this morning and everything was good. So I'm here to talk about special education. We service students in pre-K, we the district, pre-K, Blackstone, Lincoln, Northbrook.
And who are you?
Oh, Jody Peterson, Director of Student Services. Topics for tonight, just kind of an overview, like what is special ed? Some of you may know, some of you may not. Some people get a little confused with the terminology, lots of big words in special ed. I'm just gonna focus mainly on our continuum of services. I'll show you what that is, what that looks like here at Mendota, and then a little bit of congruency amongst buildings, what we're doing, what we're implementing, and then, you know, where we're kind of going. So first of all, special education. So it's specialized instruction for students. It's not a one-size-fits all. A student who has special services has something called an individualized education plan or an IEP. Within that IEP, the teacher works with, after the student's evaluated, the teacher works with the school psych, myself, and they develop goals, and those goals are very individualized, and that's what basically special ed is, individualized instruction for students. So we have a continuum of service that we follow. It goes from the least restrictive to the most restrictive, and I've broken down each category just to kind of give you an idea of what each of those look like, what they each mean. So the first one is the general education, and you know, federal law, and it's not, I always tell teachers, it's not Jody's law, I'm not telling you what to do, this is the federal government saying to me, you know, hey, you have to provide the least restrictive. You want to start where students can be exposed to their gen ed peers as much as possible. So our first place is the general education curriculum. That's where they get the most exposure. But we know some kids learn differently, and therefore they might need a little more support. And so we go through the next one, is consult services, and that's a minimal amount of special ed support. And that looks like 10 minutes a week. That looks like a teacher, and we'll see this mainly when students are going to transition back into the gen ed curriculum. It might be like 10 minutes where the special ed teacher's checking in with the gen ed teachers to say, hey, how's Johnny doing? Is he doing his homework? How's his grades? So it's very minimal, looks like maybe 10 minutes a week. We don't see that a lot, because typically if we have a kid that's ready to transition back, we want to get them transitioned back. But we kind of keep that in there just in case, because each one's individualized. The next one would be co-teaching. Northbrook utilizes co-teaching. We do not co-teach right now at Blackstone or Lincoln. We could in the future. It all depends on the needs of kids and what that looks like. And I think we have it at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and I think there's like 2, maybe 3 at each grade level. The next one is resource time. So students receive less than half of their school day with specialized instruction. So this might be, I have a diagnosis of attention deficit disorder. I'm having a really, really hard time organizing, and I'm forgetting all my work. So we might say, okay, well, let's add in a resource time, okay, where the special ed teacher will meet with that child and say, hey, let's look at your folder. And I gotta brag, and I'm gonna brag throughout this night. We have phenomenal special ed teachers. They are so creative. They have so many ideas. I mean, they'll take the kid and they're like, hey, let's take this folder and make it into, they'll take 2 folders and make them into one whole folder. And it's amazing the things they do. And then they'll put, take home, bring to school, keep here. I mean, they just really work at making instruction individualized to help that kid with his organization. So that would be like a resource time. So it's less than half of your day with a special education teacher in a special ed classroom. And it can look like a lot of things too. Let's say it's reading. I go out for reading, I get my core instruction from the gen ed teacher, okay? But guess what? I have a really hard time, I can't read very well. My fluency is difficult, so maybe that special ed teacher brings me in and reads to me. Or maybe the special ed teacher says, hey, I got a great idea. Let's get you on your Chromebook and use text to speech. And then the kid's like, wow, and then I'm in the gen ed setting. So we're always looking to get the kid back in the gen ed setting and what we can do to help that student. So this is where it gets a little trickier. We also have special class programs. This is where you start to see more time in the special ed setting. So the first one is is pull out self-contained. So that's where you pull a kid out of his gen ed reading, or you pull a kid out of like gen ed math, and you provide him, the special ed teacher provides the core instruction for reading or for math, okay? The next one would be a self-contained special ed program. This is, we've switched the name over the years. We've gone from, since I've been here, we called it Life Skills, and now we call it Cross-Cat. And what that just means, it's a title of the classroom. Cross-Cat just means you can service other disabilities within that classroom. Life Skills sounds like, okay, we're gonna service kids with intellectual, where Cross-Cat means I can service kids with autism, intellectual, emotional disabilities, other health impairments, so you can service more kids. So we've changed it to cross-categorical. So that's where you're in the class majority of your day, but you go out with your gen ed peers for like lunch, electives, PE, because the ultimate goal is we really want to push gen ed exposure for our students with special needs. especially when you're in those self-contained classrooms. And then the last one would be like a full self-contained, where you're, due to your disabilities, and this is always a team decision, it's never just my decision or Stacy or Brad, it's always team decisions, where you're in special ed pretty much the whole day, like 97% of your day. And then even more restrictive, we'd look at out of district, where a student goes to a separate school, and we do have, quite a few different districts that we're utilizing, not districts, private schools that we send kids out to. The next one's home hospital. This we would need a doctor's note. So I need a medical note from the doctor saying this child needs home hospital. And at that time, maybe the student had some severe emotional issues and had to go to a different facility like a Streamwood, or we've had that happen too. And then they're home hospital until they get better. And then when they come back, we look to have plans in place, and we do reintegration meetings, with parents too. Also, another part of that home hospital could be, let's say we had a student and there was a lot going on with the student and we couldn't get placement immediately, because placement's hard to find. I can tell you, I spent this last summer and I probably spent 30 hours on one kid. It was really hard sometimes to find a placement. But what would happen then, had I not found that kid a placement, we would have had to start him off on homebound pending placement. So he would have been homebound, and then I would have kept working and found something, and then we would have looked at that. And when a student is homebound, that's why it's so restrictive, because when they're homebound, they get 5 hours of instruction a week. So that's how it becomes more restrictive. And then obviously our last one, which is the most restrictive, would be residential. And that's where you actually live somewhere else. So I wanted to touch a little bit on congruency, because special ed ties into all the buildings, and every year looks different based on the needs of kids. And so it's sometimes really hard to know what that's gonna look like. And we start servicing kids here in Mendota at age 3. So as soon as you hit 3, boy, we have you an IEP and ready to go if you qualified and you flagged for early intervention services. So we start right at 3, and then we'll kind of talk about on the next slide. I'll show you some of the things that we do that follows along to keep us congruent. Oh, let me sort of get on. I don't want to miss something, because sometimes I'm going to tell you right now too, special is a very layered approach. So like people will come down and ask me questions sometimes, I'm like, you gotta give me a couple minutes, because you have to go through different layers. It's like an onion, you have to go through each single layer to get to the answer. There's a lot of layers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Back here. Oh, the other thing I wanted to let you know on this, so we do service kids till 8th grade, but once they turn at age 15, then they automatically still stay here, but then they become the financial responsibility of Mendota High School. So we service them from 3 till age 15 with our cost. So what's implemented in each building? So lots and lots of IEP meetings, lots of paperwork. I can tell you one IEP can be anywhere from 30 to 50 pages. We actually had one that was 65 one time. And that's a lot of work. So there's a ton of paperwork associated with it. And I have to thank Maria too. She's amazing. She keeps things running too, and it's very useful. But the IP meetings are going well. Paperwork is good. We just did a training on some goal writing too, which leads me to professional development. All the staff's trained in goal writing as needed. So when new teachers come aboard, we make sure they're able to write goals, because that's a pretty important part of the IEP. We also do CPI training every year, and that's not for all staff. We've kind of switched it up based on recommendations from principals and then from teachers themselves. Some will say, well, I really want to be CPI trained. That's at crisis prevention or preventative intervention for if you do have to restrain a child. The state in the last couple of years have passed new laws, and they're like, we don't want you to restrain any kids. We actually have a reduction in timeout committee, which we started last year. We turned that into the state. We haven't had any restraints, but we might. And it's so hard to say we're gonna have 0, because we do have 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. Those are your hard kids, because if I got a kid running to the road, I'm gonna pick him up. So, you have to just choose wisely, be as legal as possible, be very transparent, so. But good professional development, collaboration with teams, we meet with, I meet with, special ed, each building, individually for, special ed meetings. We also, this year, started, I met with social work and school psych every month, because we have a new social worker this month. So it's kind of like I said, it's based off your needs. And, I'm trying to keep it congruent, but keep things, addressing the areas that are needed when they come up. We do have all positions filled. I'll gotta take that back, with the exception of one. We just had a para that's going to Mendota High School. That's okay. We'll get somebody else. As of I think it was yesterday or maybe Friday. Oh, yesterday was Sunday. I'm sorry. Thursday or Friday. It feels like a Wednesday already to me. So.
Pretty sure today was Thursday.
Seems like Friday to me.
But we're very fortunate. Like I have to say, when I came into Mendota, because I've been in a lot of different districts, we have a lot of great things here. We have a great admin team, and we have great curriculum. I mean, I was so excited when I came in, and then I still have things that we can order and get more things. And so I do really, they're kudos to Mendota for what they've done, even with their ESL. I think it's a great district. So look at a little bit of curriculum. We do Wilson reading, but you can see foundations is the beginning of it. So like Stacy's teachers, they start off with foundations within there, and that's for kids with special needs, like needing that core reading, okay? So we kind of have our own curriculum. So like Stacy's group will start with foundations. When they go into Lincoln, they're doing Wilson reading system. And then we get to Northbrook, which would be my next slide on things we want to keep working on. We used to have Lori Yeager, and then Lori Yeager retired. So we need to get somebody else. And they've had in the last couple of years, I think there's been 1, 2, 3, 4 new teachers there. Yeah, so we definitely want to get someone else Wilson trained so we can continue with that continuum because it's teaching kids to read. We also use Teach across all buildings. That's our structured teaching. And what that is, it's a lot of visual systems for students with autism, but you can also use it for any kind of kid who's having a struggle, even with like executive functioning. And something comes up and I'm like, hey, let's get the kid a visual. You do a first, then. First, take your coat off and put it in your locker. Then you can go have recess for 10 minutes. So it's kind of that working to gain independence, but being very predictable for students. And then we also use unique curriculum across the district, and that would be in those cross-cat classes, and that curriculum is specifically for kids with an intellectual disability. So it does give a guidance for teachers on what to teach. So that's kind of what we're implementing. Where are we going? Well, we know we have some teachers retiring in the next couple years, and I keep thinking, that Amy Luffman, she's so good at Wilson, please don't leave, but she's gonna. And so I know like that's somewhere we're gonna have to look at. We still need to look for Northbrook. And some of that's still with keeping teacher retention. A lot of special ed people, I mean, there's a shortage, and so they want to go somewhere else. They are pretty good at leaving. We also want to make sure we're doing the structured teaching with Fidelity. We continuously look at that. Curriculum, where are we going? We've been using LLI, but there might be other things that we might want to look at. I don't know what those are. We talk as an admin team a lot, try to figure those things out. For writing curriculum, we spent some time last year on that with myself and some Lincoln staff, and we looked at some step-up writing, and so we're going to kind of head in that direction a little bit because we have kids that come in with writing goals and we can't service them, and special ed teachers will say, I need writing. I'm like, well, let's look at that. So, and then right now we use number worlds, and we have some talks like, is that, do we want to keep with that or should we look for something else? So it just kind of shows you, what we're doing that's well, where we need to be going, and just to try to keep that all together with all the special ed services. So questions for me? It's a lot to take in. I kind of went fast, and some of you may already know a lot of that info, but.
So you can kind of flip back to your slide that had the pyramid
Oh, yeah,
on it.
sure can.
So I think that this is really important to understand how this least restrictive environment continuum works. And when students are in one of these programs, things tend to go really well, right? So no matter where you are on this continuum, if you're identified as we've identified a student as needing resource, and they've got a plan worked out, and you're firmly like right in the middle of that plan, things go really well for those kids. Where things get especially stressful in this special education world is when kids are on the edge of this and they're headed one way or the other, right? So if they're just in resource, but that may not quite be enough support for them, and so then you, according to this federal least restrictive environment, you can't, least restrictive environment means you have to do whatever you can to keep everybody in as close to the general education tier as possible, right? So you need to keep everybody down here. And so when kids are in that in-between area of transitioning from one tier to the next, it's super stressful for the kid, super stressful for the parent, super stressful for the staff members. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how to make those times, how to support everybody as much as possible so those times can be as productive as possible.
What's the reasoning?
Sure.
I mean, obviously I want them as normal as possible to go about their daily lives like every other child, but if it's noted that they're not, why can't we push them to have the best options for them? Like, why is it pushed the other way versus more towards special class programs?
Yeah, and so the team, and again, like Jody alluded to, it's a team of professionals that has these conversations and make the decisions, and the parents are a part of that. And so you have to gather the right amount of data to get the best program in place that we can.
And I think what started too is IDEA started like in the 1970s. I don't have an exact date. I think it's 72, 74, 76.
72.
So thank you. Okay, and so when that started, I mean, it was like special ed kids were all separate all the time.
Mhm.
They were not included. And so that was the whole point of the continuum, is to work to include kids more. And what happens, like when I'm in kindergarten, if I'm in one class all day long with 3 kids that are special needs, I don't learn. I don't get to see peer modeling. And that's a really important thing. You know, I know in Stacy's building, we have a little guy that went out. He's not going out a ton. We're working with it. You know, we're always looking to switch. And he's out in math right now. And I went in to watch him last week, and I'll be darned, I'm sitting there, and he's raising his hand. And I thought, well, he's never raised his hand before. But he saw his peers raising his hand. So you can kind of see some of that and how kids learn from their peer models as well. So it's really that inclusion part of it to incorporate them.
Jody, have we had a lot move in this year with IEPs?
We always have a lot moving.
Well, I'm.
Well, it
We
depends.
have a neon sign.
I understand. I understand.
We do. It says come to Mendota.
And then it
It's
says
the
go to
best
LaSalle
special
and then
ed
go
here.
to Oglesby and then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
gotta
What's
see.
really tricky sometimes, like if we have a move-in, and like I had a move-in come in, and the last placement he would have been on this out of district, and the last district I don't want to say they rejected, but they terminated his placement. And so then he came, and I had to look to see, and sometimes based on the kid's level, there's a lot of things going on. Kids are very intricate. That's why they're individualized. That's why they have plans. That's why we're here to help them. But he was so intricate that he needed a lot of different supports, and that took some time. So, we do have a lot of kids move in, and then we also have a lot of kids move out. So I think it just,
So if you include speech IEPs,
yeah.
what percent of our 1,000+ kids
So-
has an IEP? Is it 20?
No, so there's like 260, maybe it's between like 240 and 280 of special ed. And of that 240, 280, I think there's like, let's see, 40, 60, 80 of those kids would be speech only kids.
Okay.
Okay, to kind of give you an idea.
Like how many, like 504s?
You know what, that varies a little bit. It's probably, I'd say for 504s, you're probably looking in the 20s to 30s.
These big numbers, I don't know.
So
504 is that it's,
Tends to be more.
it's a lot like if you have a child that's ADHD, but they just need to maybe sit closest to you at the closest seating to you during the test, and
Like an
second-
accommodation.
It's an accommodation. It's a
Yes.
504 accommodation.
So I say it's like you level the playing field. Like, let's say you need glasses right now to see, okay, so you can see. So I'm gonna give you glasses so that you can see, cause I've leveled the playing field. That's how I like to look at a 504. So if I need something that's gonna level the playing field with me and my peers, I'm gonna get that so I can be successful with my gen ed peers.
So Amanda, the answer to your question is yes. If we are as a district, district-wide at about 23 or 24% of our kids with an IEP, the statewide average is only gonna be about 15 or 18%.
Yeah, I think we're 21 maybe.
But the numbers in this area are extremely high.
How many of our kiddos are outplaced?
So not a ton, but let's see here. I think it's like, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but it's like 4, 3, 7, 8, 9, maybe between 9 or 11, right around in
I
there.
was guessing a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that mostly circuit breaker?
Nope. Mm-mm.
That's.
Nope, but I love Circuit Breaker, by the way. I love what they provide. I think they're fabulous over there. They really do, but we have 3 students at Circuit Breaker.
And
My
having
question was-
1% of your district, of your kids off-site, that is pretty typical. I'm sorry.
Well, how often do you communicate with parents? I mean, I remember sitting in IEP meetings,
Mhm.
but that was once in the spring,
Mhm.
where you really sat down with parents.
Yeah, so case managers, so every teacher has a group of students on their load, it's called a
Right.
caseload.
Right.
And so every teacher has that, so they communicate with that parent as well. And then also, I get lots of calls from parents. Yeah, I mean, there's always parents calling, and, you know, I always say, have you talked to the teacher? Okay, well, what's going on here? And let's talk about this, because everybody has a legitimate concern.
Right.
But yeah, I get a lot of parent calls too,
Okay.
so I talk to them a lot.
Do you mean like an IEP meeting or just general communication? back
General
and forth?
communication.
So like my cross-cat teacher, daily communication with every parent of every student in that
Yes.
classroom.
That's awesome.
It's, they even
Not
text
always
each other.
picking up the phone to call them, but
But-
they message back and forth.
Perfect.
There are behavior charts and academic charts that go home.
Mhm.
My 2 resource teachers have regular communication as well.
Do we have many parents, guardians refuse services?
No,
No.
I think that's a big communication piece. It happens once in a great while, but typically, you know, it's communication. There's people, you know, there's reasons why people do that or wanna do that.
Yeah, typically, a parent will refuse services if they don't agree with the team's placement on this continuum of where the team thinks that the child
We had that
best
last
served.
year. We had that last year with a kindergartner. And by the end of the year, the student had an IEP again.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, of course.
I think too, it's, we talk about this all the time, but the needs of the students coming to us anymore are so far greater than we've ever seen. I heard Holly say our special ed numbers in this area, not just Mendota, are higher, and that is correct. But we're seeing a lot of needy.
High needs.
High needs.
For sure.
A lot of high needs coming in. Every year it's more and more. So, we have a great staff. They work super hard to try to meet the needs of every single kid. And their job is tough. It is hard. And the
Yeah.
paras as well. It's tough.
Now, on that line, you had mentioned something about the co-teaching piece or tier, like maybe not being yet implemented as much or in the same way
Mhm.
at the 2 other buildings, but maybe at Northbrook. Is that something that like would help with like the higher numbers, or I guess I don't know what that would look like either at the lower grades?
It's always possible, I mean, it's always possible to look to say, okay, the part we can run into, there's a couple different things. One is, you have to have a teacher who has time in their schedule,
Yes.
okay? Because once you start team teaching, that's, you know, that's a big commitment within that time. And
Mhm.
if I'm pulling this kid for reading and I'm pulling this kid for math, I got these 3 kids coming in and these 8 coming in and those 9 coming, I don't have any time in my schedule to pull off the team teaching. So sometimes
Yeah.
that's part of the hurdle there.
Mhm.
The other thing is, with co-teaching, let me think, was I gonna say something else? So at the lower levels, a lot of times, your gen ed teachers are still doing a lot of that readings, the phonics, they have title programs. And so you're catching all those kids in there too, so the need's not as great as like it might be at a Northbrook. because you have more supports in that K-4, pre-K-4 group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the co-teaching definitely depends on the needs of the kids and their levels. We have a few first graders this year that are a resource, but they're getting their core with the special ed teacher because they're so much lower than the other first grade kids where they don't know their letters and sounds yet. So they have a different core, so she couldn't go in and teach the first grade curriculum because they're so much further behind. So
No.
but it's not like that every year. It wasn't
Yeah,
that way last year, so
situational.
it
Depends on the
depends.
students.
It does, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the transition and how you work with the high school to prepare the kids from
Yeah.
our programs to theirs?
Todd Doyle and I are actually gonna meet, December. It gets earlier and earlier every year. I think Mitch keeps in line over there. I don't know, I joke about that, cause I'm like, Mitch, here we go again, and you're getting earlier on me. So Todd and I meet, we pull in each 8th grade teacher. We get a floating sub who goes around, we pull in each 8th grade teacher, we block out times. Paula will come down too as well. I'll talk maybe about our out of district students, and then the teachers will come in, we'll look at their schedule, we'll look at Mendota High School, and we'll kind of talk about, what looks comparable for that student, and then the parents part of that process with Todd.
Is the student part of it as well?
Not when I meet with the teachers, but with Todd and the parents, yes.
Do we have any, I know, back when we had some that went to Holy Cross that we provided some services for.
We still do that too, so we have some students with, they're called individual service plans, individualized service plans, ISPs. And that is, so if I have a special ed kid that's at Holy Cross, what we offer here at Mendota is we offer speech services. So if you have an IEP and it's for reading, occupational therapy, and speech, we offer speech only because we have some proportionate share dollars. It's not very much dollars, but it's something, and so we use those dollars to offer the speech. We wouldn't be able to offer everything else because for one, we don't have the people to go over to Holy Cross. So that's where we offer speech for kids with ISPs. And I explain all that to parents so that they understand that, because I think sometimes parents, if you don't know anything about special ed, you might think you're gonna get all these services, and I just explain that this is what we offer. If you come to public school, you'll get those services, but we'll also service you through your ISP, and it's always a parent decision, I tell parents.
You mentioned something about the 15-year age.
Yes.
As far as going over. Are they all keeping under that, or just situational? Do some go?
So usually this year I have one 15-year-old, but they stay here anyway. If they're
Okay.
already here in 8th grade and they're 15, let's say they're 15 in March, Mendota High School picks up the bill, but then we still service them till
Okay.
the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so every year, I think last year I had one, the year before I had 5.
Okay.
So it just kind of depends on the year. Anything else?
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. There you go. There you go.
You did a very nice job of explaining it all, in terms that we can understand. I mean, I guess I knew some background knowledge from being a teacher, but I still think you did a very nice job.
Thank you. There's a lot with special, there's so much, and
Yeah.
it's just intricate. So if you ever have questions, feel free to call me too.
Well, you're just showing it to me so that I know where we're at.
That helps or no?
Yes. So we are to board committees and reports.
Yes.
Which we didn't have any. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, the tentative tax levy, do you wanna
Certainly.
discuss it better than the one that 3 of us sort of had to break during?
Of course.
A lot more exciting.
We tried.
We tried really hard to
very
learn more,
hard.
but it is seriously.
I did that one last year.
It was skewed
Probably.
for
I was not
the suburban
Yeah, it
areas.
didn't fully apply, and
Yeah. So you have to do it really exciting.
Oh, cool. Yes, not monotone. I think
Not
that's- I think that might
monotone.
take
Is it
away
that
from
graph
that.
over there?
Right. So I just want to, and before we move forward, are we all right if our administrators
go.
are done for the
Yes,
for the
please.
evening?
Unless you wanna
We're gonna go
stay.
home.
Unless you want to
I'm gonna work on the sub-crisis.
Okay.
Oh, you
Thank
see,
you.
we.
Thank you
Yeah,
for being.
go.
Thank you for
Go.
being here.
Oh, thank you.
Jody,
Yes,
Jody.
you wanted to stay for the
Jody, I
dance,
do have a
right?
suggestion
You
for
have to
math.
take a cupcake.
What's it?
I do have a suggestion for math.
Oh, I thought you said you have math. What
No,
about
do the math.
Gotta take
Yeah.
a
Do the math for sped. Do the math. Look
Oh,
at it. Do the,
It's
do the
called
math.
do the math?
Do the math.
Okay, that's something else to look at, thank you,
Yeah.
do the math.
Do the math.
Good
Thanks,
stuff.
Holly.
So I want to back up
If you pay attention.
and take a look from kind of a balcony perspective. So I did print off our latest Mendota 289 index for you. And so I know that school finance can be confusing in a hurry, right? And so if you take and look at all of our fund balances all added together, this is basically our cash on hand or invested at any given time. And so if you track it over time, it gives us a nice snapshot of what the health of our district looks like. If you look 4 years ago at the end of October, and we had $10 million, and the following year we had $8 million at the same point in time the next year, and the following year $6 million, and you can see patterns, you can see trends, right? And so I just wanted to put this M289 index in front of you, just so you can see that as we have finance conversations, we're in a good spot, right? Everything's pretty level. Actually, we've had a pretty big jump this last year in the way we've kind of navigated through ESSER funds, but that gets kind of skewed and kind of goofy. So, but at the end of the day, we're nice and stable, and that's a huge positive. It's a great thing to know, right? So, that being said, it's tax levy time. In December, we have to adopt a tax levy. A tax levy is just simply whatever rate we want to put on it, multiplied by the wealth and worth of all the property in our district. Okay? One number times another number get you how much money we're going to get. Okay? If we keep our tax rate the same, our tax rate last year was 269. If we keep our tax rate the same, we had like a, I don't have the number in front of me, we had like an 11% jump in our EAV. Some TIF property rolled out of a TIF. The village is in the process of recapturing it, but it's now at a much higher assessment. And so now there are tens of millions of dollars that we were able to come onto our tax rolls and will stay on there. And we will now capture that local property tax. So because the wealth of our district went up, the property wealth of our district went up by 11%, if we kept our tax rate the same, our total dollars will go up by 11% as well.
That's a heck of a jump.
It's a great deal, right? It's a great deal. We're not going to increase anybody's tax rate, and we'll have the additional funds that we need. So it's fantastic. If you look at there are thresholds that go along with this. Anytime your tax dollars go up over 5%, you have to have a truth in taxation hearing, which is really no big deal because the way that I historically have done a levy, and we did it last year, we always go through the truth in taxation process anyway, because the truth in taxation process has a lot of advertising and communication to the community and a hearing built into it. And I think those are all good communication pieces, right? So we always do it. So if we look at keeping our tax rate flat, we will have somewhere in the neighborhood of $750,000 new tax dollars without an increase in anybody's individual. Now, if the assessor went through your house last year and increased the assessment on your house, well, your taxes are gonna go up. But we don't control that part of it, right? So, questions about that process? If you'll recall, last year we had a conversation about whether or not to keep the tax rate flat or increase it. And after the dialogue, we ended up with a nickel increase, which we were able to enact. That is not my recommendation for next year. Since we already have this increase in tax dollars, I don't think there's a need to increase that tax rate this year. I think that's a conversation that the board should have every year with Fidelity about what that looks like and where we are. Because I don't know if you'll recall, but if you look at the surrounding elementaries, we're one of the lowest as far as tax rate goes. If you combine our tax rate and the high school tax rate, it's under $5, which is for a K-12 education, that's a fairly low tax rate.
When we were at this point last year, I just don't have like all of that in front of me or in the top of my brain.
Sure.
And we were talking about the nickel and whatever increase.
Yep.
What were we seeing for the projection then? Like if we're seeing this, 11% increase for this year, what were we looking at last year?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think our EAV increase was in the neighborhood of 4%.
Okay. Wasn't sure, I couldn't remember.
And so last year we had a 4 or 5% increase in EAV, which was gonna bring us in new money. And then the conversation was, okay, that increase in money, is that really enough? No, let's put another nickel on top of it in rate, right? To make sure that we have more new money, enough new money come in to continue to chart forward on the things that we want to do with respect to operations and take care of our kids. But if you continue this awesome hand model I've got going here. But if you look at this year, what we're looking at, yep, here, put your finger like right there. See, so this year we're already like up there even without a tax rate increase.
Yes.
So we're in a good spot.
Because we had the conversation
Yeah,
last year.
see, right there, see, all kinds of things.
Didn't we had the conversation last year about the fact that we thought we're going to need to increase this year
Mm-hmm.
to keep bumping up a little bit each time, but with this,
Well,
with the
EAP
tip,
jumped so much
we
and then the
now
tip
don't
on
need
top
to.
of it.
Correct, correct. No, good stuff, very good stuff.
I mean, I think the money, you have to look at it, the money all comes from the same community, right? And so the community's seeing that this much more has to be raised to the pot, right, before it gets split up. So all we do by upping that is just making that burden a little bigger. And so you have to be really careful with your community and what it can sustain long term. Because you don't take it away. It's not like you're like, well, we'll try that this year and then take it away. Like it's there.
Correct,
right?
So,
correct.
okay. So, unless there's any other discussion, could we have a motion to approve?
And again, the formal approval's not tonight, this is just a
No, okay.
preliminary.
Preliminary.
And so that allows us to go through the truth and taxation process. The formal approval will be at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
My bad. All right, discussion items.
Do we need to make that motion?
If we could have an approval of the tentative.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'd be
approval of the tentative, I'm sorry.
Yep, that'd be great.
great. I'll approve the tentative tax levy in the total amount of $7,380,728 with no anticipated rate increase.
In a second.
I second.
Roll call.
Landers,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Goss,
Yes.
Kane,
Yep.
Comitas.
Yes. Okay. Jumping into the sales tax.
Yeah, and so again, just kind of a discussion item. One of the things that some counties have is a countywide sales tax. And, well, they all have countywide sales tax, but they have a countywide sales tax that is specifically designated for school facility improvements. So this 1% additional sales tax, once it's generated, it's given to schools, and it has to be used on facilities. We get money every year from Lee County because Lee County has the 1% sales tax. when I was over a little bit west of here, it was always a conversation piece because in Iowa, this is actually statewide. And so the thought process is, that schools are very, very heavily reliant on property tax. And so this kind of allows to spread that burden out to a different tax. So it's not just focused on property tax. My assumption is that it's been tried in LaSalle County before, and failed. I have had area superintendents start to have the conversation, hey, what do your boards think about this? It's been a while since we've had the conversation. And so don't need to decide anything tonight, but just kind of, planting the seed and having the conversation. One of the reasons why for Mendota, a 1% sales tax dedicated to school facilities does make sense is because we're not LaSalle Peru. So if you look at the proportion of sales tax that's currently generated in the county, the majority of it is generated in LaSalle Peru. And so if you look at the way dollars flow from a kind of a net, in kind of a net sense, any type of sales tax like that would actually flow money from LaSalle Peru to us. It's not like it would be generated here and we would be giving it away. We were just in Chicago, right? And one of the big gripes is so many different tax dollars are generated in Chicago and then gets filtered downstate, right? That's always been historically one of Chicago's gripes. Well, we would kind of be for us in the sales tax conversation is the opposite of that. So much sales tax is generated in LaSalle Peru and it would flow our way. So,
And it does not tax groceries, medical bills, medications, gasoline, nothing essential. It's kind of, we used to refer to it as kind of like the luxury tax. Like it's going out to the movies, going out to eat, going shopping at the mall, but it's not on essentials. It's often referred to as the 1 cent sales tax. But it does have to pass county-wide. So I'm glad you guys are having a conversation because I think why it's failed in the past is it's often been very broken in approaching it. So like a district is like, hey, we should do this, and it really has to be a complete county effort to do it, and then you get it on the ballot, and then it's still like 18 months or something. It's a huge lag time before it comes back into the district. So, but it's.
What would be the first ballot opportunity it would be in?
So the process is to even get it on the ballot. A majority of the school districts in the county, a majority of their boards have to approve a resolution saying that they want to do it. And when I say a majority of the boards, I mean with respect to student enrollment. So if we had, if we had 5 districts in the county, but one of the district had 55% of the kids, as long as that one board passed it, it would go on the ballot, countywide.
Okay.
And it's the state dictates the language for it, and it's awful. So it takes just a ton of education. I think a lot of counties got on early, but I want to say it's like a 70% failure rate in the last 10 years or something like that.
Yep.
It's tough.
Well, when did Lee County pass theirs? Was it like 3 years ago?
No, we started getting the money like maybe 4 years ago, so it would have been like probably more like 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago when it passed.
Got it, okay.
And Lee County's the same, everything's generated in Dixon and nobody else gets anything else. I mean, if they
Actually, you'd actually be surprised because Amboy would have a lot because of all the recreation places.
Yeah, we get quite a bit of money
Yeah.
for it, and
The
so
whole-
it comes in the county.
But again,
and
that's a seasonal industry.
But that's a lot of money.
so it all goes into one bank, and then it's evenly divided by all the kids in the county. So regardless of where the money's generated within the county, it spreads evenly back based on how many kids that you have. I mean, it would be the amount of money we get is surprisingly large for the number of kids that we have in Lee County.
Right.
It always surprises me every year, and we didn't really know it was coming until the first time it came. We were a little surprised. I love the idea. I think it's worth conversation. I'm glad you
I
brought it
do
up.
too.
We talked about it years ago, and there was a lot of negativity because it has failed. But I think again, that's based on it not being a coordinated effort. All districts would have to really want to jump on board. It's just a ton of education for people to understand and modeling out. It's not on your essentials. It's when you have the extra $20 to go to the movies. Now it's, you know, $22, right?
$20.20.
20 cents, yes,
Yeah.
1, not 10.
Yeah.
20
All
cents
good.
more over top of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So now, just to recap, is this like superintendents starting that conversation?
Yes.
Not like
Yes.
actual boards meeting?
I don't know that,
To
I don't,
start.
I don't know where else that this has been discussed at the board level other than right here tonight.
Gotcha.
But there's no resolutions being passed to your knowledge, it's just
Correct.
casual conversation.
It's casual conversation to see if there's an interest.
Do you know, well, I'm sure you'll be looking at this, but like which districts would have to be, who has the supermajority and which ones would have to be on if others were off?
Yeah, you're a numbers guy, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, maybe figure that out, be interesting. And I wanna say, and I don't know that I'm remembering this exactly right, but I feel like one of the early times that they tried to pass this, there was a district against it or a community against it that actually petitioned, like,
Well, I don't know how this works into it, but I know that at some point in time when the conversations were going, it might have even been on the ballot, was very near to when Peru passed its own
Yeah, yeah,
1% sales for the schools. And so Peru was super against it because they already had it in
Yes.
place for themselves.
and I think, yes, you're right. I remember that there was a coordinated effort against it, which is rare.
Yeah.
Normally it's,
Because Peru built Parkside, which that's about 9 years old.
so it's interesting.
9 or 10
conversation.
years old.
Yep, so.
It was on the delegate assembly the first year I did it at the school board meeting, and it was overwhelmingly opposed because districts that either already had it, were worried that they already had it or were intending to have it, were worried that if it became a statewide thing, then the state would control the money, and so they would collect from everybody and then decide where it went.
That's a
and-
real fear in the state
Right.
of Illinois.
And in some areas that don't have, you know, a way to really generate it, they would get as much as the areas where, you know, so the same residents would be paying the cent all the time, and it wouldn't really be equal.
Right.
So, anyhow, good conversation.
You bet.
All right, project time.
Yeah, so, again, nothing to vote on, but an opportunity to have conversations. I know that, there's a lot on the table, right now that we've had conversations about. When you kind of break everything down, the total scope of what's been presented to us is really in the neighborhood of about $5.3 million, and that's a big number, right? And so I think we've tried to break that down into what that looks like and what the different pieces are and what the priorities might be. Especially when you consider the fact that, about a third of that, 30% of it or so ends up being roofing, which is a big deal. And the majority of it needs done anyway, right? Some of it a little bit early, and you could argue some depreciation costs there. But just kind of, open the floor and, would really like to, have a pretty good understanding of what we're gonna do at our December board meeting. But again, not wanting to rush anything because these are big decisions, big conversations.
I was thinking about the roofing, and how it would now all be brand new right now, so it wouldn't concern us in 30 years, but we're gonna have to redo all of those roofs at the exact same time come 30 years from now, and taking that into consideration, is that leaving it for a world of hurt later?
Yeah, no, great question. So typically what happens is where we are right now. So if you kind of back this solar out of things, where we are right now is we're kind of in that cycle. So a campus tends to do that in that year before last, we redid the Blackstone roof. So it's new and everything's good there. This last summer, we did a huge chunk of the Northbrook roof over here. Again, discounting the solar, we're gonna do another big part of Northbrook this year. And the following year, we would do another big chunk, right? And so then maybe 5 years or so after that, we would redo Lincoln, and then we'd be set, and we wouldn't do any roofing for another 20 years, except kind of patching. And so that's kind of the tip, for a campus like us, that's kind of typically the way it happens is, you're like, we need to do roofing now, and so over the course of 5 or 6 years, you partition it all out, and you get your roofs taken care of, and then you don't do anything for another 15 years.
I thought it was more a little bit slower over time, the buildings we had.
I think it's because it ideally probably should have been, but I've been guessing based on the decades of putting off any preventative maintenance and like patching the patches and patching those patches, and we never pulled the trigger. Like, I'm guessing that some of the roofs that we did this summer, probably their end of life was several years before that.
Guaranteed.
Because I remember sitting and having a lot of those meetings where we were like, let's just try one more coat of whatever, and then we'd come in and something will have collapsed through the ceiling, and it was awful. So, yes, it does feel like you potentially setting it up, but hopefully by having the district in a better financial state, preventative maintenance and that maintenance cycle, and having the, having the GRP Wegman type of people kind of keeping an eye on the system, hopefully we can kind of cycle things like we did with the painting. We're going to paint a bunch all of a sudden really quick, but then it'll spread out over time and be able to catch up.
We're gonna have a paint crew every summer for the next decade, just telling you.
And by then it'll be time to paint the stuff
Yep.
that was 10 years old.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be brown.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
So-
Did we ever get any numbers or general idea on upkeeps for the solar once it goes in, what that may add into it over time?
Yeah, I don't think we have a great understanding of that. That's something that I think we need to continue to research a little more.
That and resale value, I think you mentioned at some point where they didn't work as well, but they still worked, and we would take them off, but we could sell them for parts almost.
Yeah, I would full disclosure, that upkeep, that maintenance, hey, is it working? If something goes down, who fixes it? How does all that?
Right.
To me, that's a big conversation that we need to make sure that we need to have answered, because I know a lot of things. I don't know how to fix solar panels, right?
So I also, in full disclosure, told Brad over the weekend, like, I'm nervous and I'm not there yet. I'm not convinced yet personally. I did have a conversation with kind of the solar expert guy that happened to be standing at the GRP booth when we went by. The net savings and the amount that we get back at the break even point and then beyond, with the fact that 80% right now of the cost is covered.
Oh yeah, we'll get about over 83, 84% of it we'll get.
So he mentioned there's also some potentials for 10% here and or potentially 10% here. I mean, I think I think he was going to get us some more of those numbers, because some of those were brand new, right? Did you hear anything from him since then?
Like in other grants, these 10.
American Made Products was another 10%, and then communities identified as low income.
But he also said that they would not know any of those particulars until like May or June, which would be after we would have to make those decisions.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. It's like the stock market. Like, when do you pull the plug, right? Like, it could get better over here, but then it could all go away. But we're gonna have to put a roof on 5 years from now, no matter what. We also have that weird in the middle scenario of, do we go with, we had talked about that too when he was here, like, do we go with putting on the areas where we aren't going to have to re-roof and only take advantage of that portion of it to take off that costs, because essentially in those areas, it would be very little investment for
What
us
was your
overall.
concerns? You said you weren't convinced. What is it that, what are you worried about?
So it's a lot of money up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't love the idea of like dropping down that volume of cash. I know we have some other funding options for it.
You mean for all the projects or that one in particular?
That one and that one particular. Mainly because when you add the roofing in with our expense, and yes, we'll get a lot of it back, but it's still we're committing to that full amount off the get-go. And when you talk about the numbers that these cost compared to what our annual budget is, I mean, it's a big amount of money for a small district. But then when I had a chance to talk with our solar guy, and he's like, we've never seen programs like this ever, where they're practically giving it to you. It's like you just go back and forth with it, and then I think Brad's concern of what if it goes wrong, not concern, but example, what if it goes wrong? It is going to be our maintenance cost to fix if it does. And what if in 20 years there's not a great disposal and it costs us a ton of money to get rid of them? And I just that it really is. It's not the same surefire investment as changing the doors, right?
Well, and
Like,
you also can't talk to somebody who's had it for 15 years and see how it worked for them, because nobody's had it for 15 years.
That's my concern, is
think that
there's
the
not a lot of schools that have it on the roof.
Are there really none that have had it for a while?
I think from
West Coast
when
at
I was walking around with one of the Spring Valley board members, they when they built onto JFK and made JFK a pre-K 8 building, there was solar was not an option, and that's when they went with geothermal. So that hasn't been around that long. So they went with geothermal instead of solar for that reason, that it wasn't. What I mean, there was more the solar on the ground, but not much on the roof. So that's what I said to Brad. I said I'd like to see
north of town.
yeah,
a
the
whole-
solar fields.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd
Solar
like,
fields, which they said were too landlocked to do, so we have to put it on the roof, and we do have to realize, and then they don't weigh nothing, like they are weighted, it is pressure on your roof.
But my point, I'm gung ho about this idea of solar, and it's more philosophical. It's a renewable energy source. To me, it's the right thing to do. I mean, we're gonna have expenses for electricity from now until the end of time. If we can generate our own, on our own rooftop, that seems, and I just, again, a philosophical thing for me. It's like, decrease our carbon footprint. We have climate change going on. Nobody can deny that anymore. It just seems like this is something positive. Yeah, there's risks. We don't have them all covered. But with anything we do, any new implementation of whether it's curriculum or what have you, there are risks involved. And we can't predict that. And I think we have to come to grips with that idea that, yeah, we don't know if they break down, how much is it gonna cost to fix one of these? We don't know. And we don't have a lot of experts that can tell us 10 years out what it's gonna cost. Well, they can't tell me 10 years out what it's gonna cost to fix my furnace either. But
I think some of your points were actually some of the reasons I was kind of the other way, which was there's so many new conversations around renewable energy and the changes with, the wind energy and the water energy and all the different things that are, coming to be. I mean, look at cars 5 or 8 years ago compared to what we can do with cars today and what cars will look like 10 years from now. Like, is what we have right now the time to make probably one of the single largest purchases this district will have ever made? Are we 100% sure that this is the best option for us? Like, I don't disagree with anything what you're saying. I love the idea of having that concept in place. I just still don't feel like, because there's so many question marks and because it takes so long for the investment to break even, that if any one of those unknowns pops back, then our risk ends up taking lots of money away from,
So I think from a strictly
Kids.
financial standpoint, this federal money, which we'll call it 30%, that has just come this year, that's really what makes this a conversation right now.
Right.
Because for us in that project, that's $600,000. So if you do the math, if our electric bill's at 80 grand a year, and we've already talked to people and we know that we can have a really comfortable conservative estimate saying that moving forward, instead of paying $80,000 in electric bills, we're gonna pay 40, kind of a worst case scenario. So we're gonna say 40 grand a year on our ComEd bill. That's awesome. So if at the end of the day, our out-of-pocket's 390, well, at 40 grand a year, 390 is, that's about 7 years. And that's a pretty quick payback. You know, things should remain fairly stable for that long, if not longer. If you look at what this project looks like without that $600,000, 600,000 at 40,000 a year, that's an extra 15 years it would take to pay back. I don't think I would even brought this project to you if that was the case. Because then you're looking at a payback that's 22, 23 years out, and there are way too many unknowns in 2 decades worth of whatever, right? So that federal money really makes it a conversation for now.
I wonder, and this would have to be a question I have to take back, you know, building is everything's expensive right now, right? Like
Mhm.
everything's costing,
Just wait for our NICOR bill to come in.
right, everything's costing way more. But that also means that when we do a project like the roof for, you know, $675,000, is that the inflated number? Could that be a more inflated number? Like what would that project, because we're pulling the trigger on that project 5 to 7 years earlier than we would need to on the one over at Lincoln. So we are taking some of that roof life away,
Mm-hmm.
and we're doing it at a time that's like a lot of people aren't building, expanding, doing such because the prices are up so much.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but the general rule of thumb is that the price of construction will outpace whatever the other inflations are. And so it's from a time of money perspective, it's always cheaper to do things now. It's not always the case, but historically that's been the case.
So backing up for a second, if everybody's looking at this project list, the ABCs, the things that are are pretty much all the security things with the addition of the 5th grade, which we were gonna have to do no matter what here. To try to break this down easier, is there anyone in opposition of any of the A level things, the security related entrances, doors, and the roof that's failing already? Is there any opposition there? Like, can we take those all and move them to the yes column?
I'm sorry, you're saying anything A you wanted to get moving with?
So, like,
Well, no, we're not voting on it, I'm just trying to get like a straw poll
An
right now,
idea.
so
Yeah.
when they prioritize them, these were the things that were not aesthetic necessarily. Like, remember he had said, well, we could make the front of North look prettier by doing this to the windows or this, whatever. These are like hey, we're gonna have locking doors, we're gonna have, you know, the entrance to our building separate from where the kids are at. And then the portion of the roof over 5th grade that's failing, which is a necessity to fix. Is there anything just in those A's that anyone is not 100% comfortable on? Like, so we can narrow our conversation from this massive list.
No, I think it's gotta be done.
I mean, we all agreed when we built the vision and, you know, the goals for the district that the safety of our students and staff was our number one priority. So I don't know how we say that and then not do it, right? Like, we gotta have locking doors. That's just insane that we have doors that don't lock. Interior doors. So no opposition with any of those.
And that roofing was
for the 5th grade, the A is,
Regardless of solar,
It has to.
just
Correct.
double check.
it
That
has to
one
be done.
is, yeah, that one is on our summer list because we can't patch the patches anymore. Okay, so that at least narrows this list down a little bit.
It's great.
I do wanna pick back up on the solar conversation, but, looking specifically at the roofing, so the 5th grade, we know that was an absolute, but the 630,000 here and the 655,000 at Lincoln, those two are because of solar?
If, I'm gonna say yes. If we don't do solar, we won't do that Northbrook portion until the following summer. So
So
it's,
one
it's,
year-
it's,
one year
it's,
out.
it's end
So
of life,
it's coming,
it's not
but-
leaking like a sieve like the 5th grade part is.
Which roof is it again, Brian?
The
I-
additional roof at Northbrook, if you look under roofing, it's the additional roof, the
Yeah,
6th.
where,
So I think it's gonna be out the 6th grade wing. I would
it's,
have,
it's,
I would
it's,
have to
isn't it
look.
that part that,
He gave us those maps.
the
I
colors.
don't
Yeah.
know.
isn't it in that way south? It's that far,
No, that's the one we're doing now. That's the
Oh.
one we're doing now.
Come on,
So-
Sarah, with your organization.
So
good
the,
job,
the
good
first
job.
number-
Did take some stuff out though. I took it.
the first number is we have to do it under roofing, the second number is we'd be
Oh,
looking
you
at
have
it
it, huh?
next year. And the one after that, the Lincoln one you said was approximately 5 years.
Yep, in that ballpark. And of course, that depends on how it ages.
I don't know which part it is, but
Oh, awesome.
which part is it for Holly?
I thought he color coded it.
Yeah, it's color coded here. So this is the one, the part that we just did
Which one is?
here. And so it would be this part, and this part.
So 2, 3, 4?
2, 3, 9,
2, 3, and 9, because 9 is the 5th grade.
6th grade. Up is north.
Yeah, but isn't 9?
9's 6th grade.
Oh,
One's
okay.
5th grade.
Gotcha.
Yep.
That's how it
One
used
and
to
two.
be, is that what you're
Yep.
thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
It used to be K 1, 2, 3.
Well, that's,
Okay,
So
so,
when I think of it your way, Teresa, and what you just explained, then really we're only incurring the roof at Lincoln at
5
the
years, I
655
Mhm.
ahead of time more than anything else. So,
Mhm.
so when I look at those numbers, I think, well, like you, I'm for solar, but I'm not for $5 million all at once, and it's
It's a
lot.
big number.
That's a huge number. That's more than the air conditioning we've been fighting for 20 years. So, but when I look at it broken down, it's
Right.
that one roof at the 655 that in 5 years from now, there's a good probability it's going to cost us more. Who knows? But that's our only
it's
holdup.
really the 655 plus the 290, when you're looking for what's our net, like what's our cost, and again, those are conservative numbers, it could look better than that if we got those other potential savings back.
But the 290 is the 290 before the grant stuff.
So the 290 is what it nets at the end of the day. So
Oh,
you've
okay.
gotta put 2.1 million up
Okay,
front.
that's what I was, yeah.
Which is why it
Wanting
makes
clarification.
all of this look so much bigger.
I
Right,
know, it's
scary,
scary,
right?
it is, I mean, it's, you can't deny the fact
Yeah.
that that's scary.
Yeah, you know, I brought it up a year ago. I'm for it in ideas, but you
Yes.
give me this money, and you know I hate spending money. So.
Right, and so if it really was the 290, and if after we kind of massage some things, the 5.3 is really more like just a tick under 5, then really you're only looking at like a little over $3 million in projects, right? But you have to upfront the 2.1 million in order to net the 290 at the end of the day.
what's the chances,
With the government as reliable as they are, that we up the 2.1 and then we go to apply for the grant and they're like, oh, that one's gone.
I can't see that happening. I'm not saying that nothing would ever happen, but my guess would be that we could have some type of assurances before we would
I think
move
that's a
forward.
big
I was
question
just
for
saying,
me.
like, can
He
we,
made it sound like there
Is
was
there-
a time, like, this is good and, that's how I
Yeah.
understood it, maybe I
Yeah.
misinterpreted
like,
that.
is
I
there
wanna
a
make
back
sure
out
that-
policy?
Yeah, exactly. Like you signed on the dotted line, you're
Yeah.
gonna put the 2 million in, and then oops, like the funding got to you
Cause
first.
it's
Because
just
they've
not
done that
even,
before.
it's just not even a question if that's not there.
I mean,
Correct.
Correct.
the state of
Correct.
Illinois let people continue to apply for the construction grants for many, many years and literally just didn't fund them to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. The schools spent on a guarantee that their dollars would be matched dollar for dollar from the state, and they never got them. It
Yep.
just makes me nervous.
Yep, so we can definitely, follow up with Scott about
And check
assurances.
that.
But then besides that, those other questions, do we have, I say West Coast, who may have started solar before we did here, we don't have anybody to talk to about 15 years down the line or 20 years down the line, but can you do that for another school, or we do that, or?
You're
I don't-
talking
I'm sure
more-
there's other schools that
You're
have done
talking
this.
more longevity
Mhm.
schools.
Those questions that we
'Cause
had
there's-
about maintenance.
There's some
and-
schools near us that have had it for a few years
Right.
already, and we can even talk to
Yeah,
them.
I'm talking the
Yeah.
longer term questions.
think even
Yeah,
a
so
few
like
years
in
once is
10
good.
years, when a
I get
panel
it,
goes bad, what's it cost to replace a panel? Is it 45,000, 50,000? Cause that just ate up your entire savings.
So so as I understand it, I know you don't like this word, so that I understand that there are 25-year warranties on the panels.
Prorated
And
at
there's-
a.
No, and the most expensive part of the power generation is the inverter, and there's a 10-year warranty on
10.5 years it goes down. Sorry.
that. So, and I, full disclosure, I sent out to you guys, I have hesitations about this, right? Because I had an alternative power project that I had to babysit for a decade and was a nightmare. And so I need assurances on this too.
Yeah, just who do
Was
we
it
ask,
wind or
you
what
know?
was it? Well, cause then that makes me like, Waltham Elementary put in those windmills and forked over a bunch of money and there they sit, doing nothing. So it's like,
Why are they doing nothing?
because they built them at the old school and they tore
Oh.
the old school down. And they're sitting in a random lot.
Well, somebody made that decision. That wasn't me.
But you know what I mean? Like then.
I mean, that's a true. I mean, that's
That's true for anything.
yeah.
But it,
I mean, you're
it's
right.
cool
like
to
our-
be cutting edge until
Right.
it doesn't work and then everybody goes,
So.
why were you cutting
I
edge?
don't think solar is cutting edge. It's been around. And I think the technology continually improves, just like electric cars. The first ones had these massive batteries. And now, you plug them
Speaking
in
as a
at
Prius
super
owner
value.
whose
I mean-
engine or battery blew up and all of my savings would have cost me that much to repair it, and so it was junk to me. Like that's one of my hesitations. It's just
Sure.
like it makes you nervous because in theory, if it ran the full 15 years, it would have been great. But at year 7, when it was no longer under warranty and it blew up, all my savings went down the drain. And I get it that it's not just about money. I understand the principal portion of it. Just want to make sure we're pulling the trigger at the right time. And I have so many, I don't know why, because this doesn't normally happen to me. I'm normally like a go for it kind of person, and I don't know why. And that's what I was telling him when we were there. I'm worried about the money. So much of this is on the
Rightfully
table
so.
because someone's giving us the money. And if I'm worried about the assurances of that, I'm worried about the cost and upkeep of it. I think talking to some other schools or businesses that put it on, as long as we can find back and ask them, what does it look like? What kind of maintenance, have you had to do with it? Kind of that, how long
Yeah.
has it held up?
I might even go for a visit.
Yeah,
I mean, because this is a big deal, because I don't.
it's a huge deal.
Yep.
On principle, I'm 100% behind it.
You're saying you go for a visit
To a
where?
place,
California.
He's gonna go to
Like,
California.
I was thinking,
I'll get
they have a
the
lot
next
of,
visa bill when you see it.
they have a lot of these in Las Vegas.
So this
All the
is a
sunshine.
board.
Hawaii, I
It's a
heard
board.
Hawaii is
It's
great
a-
this
it might-
time.
it might be a
Board
board.
retreat.
I can't make the
Sure.
decision unless I
Board
see it
retreat.
myself.
So,
I don't think there'd be some in Iowa, with all those new schools.
Ugh. That's
but
not a
the
good
one that I
Go to
talked to that's
Iowa.
3 or 4 years old is in Southern Illinois. so
Okay.
that would be that place.
Where's that?
And you know what, I think it's great to talk to a
Since I
school,
don't
but I
know
think
what
even if
the
it's just an
second-
office building, and I think when you go in towards the city, there's
Yeah.
quite a few that
Find
have
out
had them
and
for
let me know.
quite some time.
Right.
So
You might
I
know.
think we can
And
get
And
a
I-
close one.
And I guess my
I can just
question
ask
is,
the IT.
whether it's in some, an installation in a field versus an installation on a rooftop, and I know the rooftop money is the part of the problem, but the maintenance and how they, the longevity of them could be, kinda in our backyard.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I'm gonna say this before I say something that kinda contradicts it. The way it sits right now with all the finances, I completely am recommending that we do this. Okay, I still need some guarantees, and I still need to check some boxes, right? But if after 7 years, for the next 2 decades, we can have half-price electricity, or better, I don't know how you don't do it, okay? Now, that being said, one of the things that keeps playing in the back of my mind is why I think it's important that this thing pays for itself fairly quickly is, if you look at our student enrollment 15 years from now, we won't have 3 buildings open. Maybe 20. But we're not gonna have 3 buildings open forever the way things are going. So as you look into your crystal ball, that's something I can't get out of the back of my mind, right? So that's part of this, that if we're gonna do this, it has to be able to pay for itself quickly.
We can also then generate and sell back the proceeds if we didn't use that building, correct?
Correct, correct.
I mean,
Or you
Amanda
can
said
sell it and then it can get tore down.
I'm helping.
she's helping.
She's doing all she can do.
Come on.
Sorry.
One more quick clarification, because I feel like we've already discussed this, but that 7-year or estimate in our minds, is that including the roofs in this that we would already need in a few years anyway?
So if you look at,
Does that make sense what I'm
Yep.
asking? Okay.
yep, so what I tried to do is I tried to cash flow this out,
Where's that?
so everybody could,
I think it's in the board, thing, isn't it?
is
It's
it,
the-
is it in
The
your board
summer
book notes?
project.
I think it's the other.
So that's why I tried to cash flow it out the way I did, is because of that 5.3 million total, the 650,000 in Lincoln roof is in there regardless of when you do it. That's assuming you only pay $650 for it.
Okay.
So
You're gonna
it's-
have to repeat that.
Yep.
So is that a yes or a no?
What was your question?
So my question is that 7-year-ish thing, is that including?
The break-even point, does that include the cost of the roof?
Does that include the cost of the roofs? Because if we could just say we finished all the roofs last year, and now we're looking at solar as its own thing, and we don't have roof costs in that, they're all brand new, ready to go, is that break even still 7 years? Does that make sense? Or is it,
When I say a break even of 7 years, that's exclusive of roofs.
Okay.
It's just the
Just the
project
solar.
itself.
okay,
Once you
Cause then it gets pushed to 13.
once you figure in,
Cause you put,
Some
even if you
depreciation.
You
argue
put
the
13 years on
depreciation
it.
at Lincoln Roof, it's still a great, then it becomes a 13-year
Yep.
payback
yep,
with the roof.
with the roof,
with a roof depreciation.
just the Lincoln one or all of them?
Just the Lincoln one, because
Okay.
the others need replaced anyway.
Correct, yep, okay.
Yep.
That helps.
Yep,
I did tell Scott if we could just find roof money, we would have no problem with this.
And like all the roofing projects, do they,
What did he say?
is that
he
a
like-
warranty
Yeah.
with the solar on it?
yes.
That, okay, I
Yes.
wasn't sure if it was a new enough thing that they weren't warranting, but they would.
Yep.
Cause I got my own suites.
Yeah, I think I asked that same exact question when he was
I know,
here.
I have to hear it
Yeah,
all
it's,
times.
right,
No, of
I
course.
can't remember either.
On the positive, there is that school safety that got passed at the delegate.
There could be some additional school safety.
Yeah,
dollars.
they passed it to advocate for more dollars.
Oh, they're gonna get it.
I like the way you think.
In 3 years.
Hey, it's all right.
It's one of those things, or do we kick ourselves, 15 years down the road going, damn, we should. I mean, but that's the question with any big project, whether it's the school district or.
I wish we didn't have to write the 2.1 million check first.
And the positive, we don't support this.
I don't, Denise does.
Oh, good.
It's her fault. She signed it.
I'm just saying.
You know what I mean, though? Like, that makes me nervous. Like, what if they back out? What if the funding doesn't come through? What if some other
I think after living through those years where there was just,
Nothing.
yeah, they just didn't,
We counted the number of days we could keep the doors open. Kind of
right.
thing.
Here you might
It's
need
hard
this, you
to-
got a month left.
Well, I think that's why it's
hard to go
important,
to the other
I think
way.
that's why it's important to make sure that we understand where we are as a district financially. You know, at the end of the last fiscal year, you know, we had $9 million in the bank. And so I think it's important that we craft this in such a way that we don't eat into reserves over time. Oh, as you hand me a cupcake.
It's Kristen. She knows
Um,
about sweet tooth.
So I think that that's an important part of the conversation. But we're in a very healthy financial spot. And this is a project that, if done correctly, will allow us to be more.
Here's a devil's advocate question. If it's so great, how come nobody else is doing it? You know what I mean? Like, why? Why can't we find schools? That one portion of them did.
Well, is it,
They're not
is it
children,
because
yeah.
they can't put it
Huh?
on unless there is a
Districts
brand
don't-
new roof?
Aren't in our position. I mean, right now, we've got a healthy balance, and a lot of districts don't.
Well, and some districts don't want to because they think it's gonna upset the neighbors. Cause I sat in a meeting last week, where the discussion was about solar, and why not? And they didn't want to upset the neighborhood.
Because it was in McField.
No, it was gonna be on the roof,
How does that upset?
because
Drones.
it's new,
So if
cause you're just putting on an expansion anyways.
this federal money is new,
Mm-hmm.
that's only come out, I don't know, since summer. And that's what makes this, if it wasn't for that federal money, we would not be having this conversation, because that makes it viable.
Did you hear anything from the neighbors of our schools? Do I wanna know?
No,
Oh.
the only feedback I had was positive
Oh, really? Okay.
From 2 people?
from 2 people.
I
Gave
also
them
had 2
opportunity.
people who work for it.
Yeah. Honestly, I really thought it was gonna sway the other way and we were only gonna hear negative.
No, I've heard people going, yeah, it's a good thing to do.
But again, so they recommend that it's put on new roofing or roofing within so many years.
Yes.
So I feel like that is a factor in
Yeah.
a lot of schools
It's gonna-
too.
To your
It's gonna
question, they
limit
kinda gotta
people.
hit it at the sweet spot,
Yep.
and it's not
Yeah, I think he
easy.
said that too, but I only hear like,
Yeah.
I'm remembering now that you're saying.
So we gave Brad a list of concerns, questions about the guarantees, about, you know, the cost, funding stuff, maintenance stuff, some samples of people that have had it for a little while, how that's working for them.
Find out how they're recycled when they are replaced. Understood.
If they're recycled or repurposed or.
The disposal point.
I feel like we kind of asked that.
He did, he said there's like a selling, you could sell at 25 years and they weren't as useful, but somebody else could buy them and use them, kind of.
I can definitely do that
But
additional legwork.
there is a
In the southern
nationwide
Nevada
question of
area.
the ones that are completely not usable anymore, and what are we doing with them to make sure that we aren't creating landfill out of
And
it?
just
Like
also,
I do with my batteries and my
so-
oil, I throw it in the trash.
So like for our sake, like the minor possible fixes or maintenance or whatever, like, I don't wanna like ever make our people do whatever, but do any of our staff, like, are we allowed to go on the roof to do work of that nature? Is this always gonna be
You were saying we, did you
hired
mean
out?
yourself?
I mean, I'm not afraid of heights, but,
She's like, I'll go to a training
She's an ag
class.
major, she wants to get in there.
yeah, no, my
No.
dad like makes me go on. the
There
roof and-
would, I couldn't envision a scenario where our people wouldn't be doing some of this.
Okay, and I feel like if you could, in your research too, because I feel like I need somebody here to be asking these questions, but if you're gonna be able to get some of it asked, like, are we talking, nuts and bolts type repairs that like come off easy? Like, what kind of complicated things
Yep.
would it entail? Or is there like a training?
I have
Like-
another thing that popped into my
'Cause I
head
feel
as
like
you
it
were,
could be very easy in my mind.
as you
but I
were
don't-
talking about that, is there, and I don't know, maybe that, cause I didn't hear his original presentation, is there, infrastructure within our buildings, like, any sort of adaptations that need to be made to receive the, power in the way that it comes in? Is there like some
My
sort of?
assumption, that's all done at the transformer,
Okay.
be my assumption, because that's my experience.
Just if our systems internally are kind of old and can't handle that, then you might be
No,
looking for.
that would not be it.
Okay.
Brad, I think, from my last meeting, Dr. Ed DeNiro's office has solar. I think it's on the roof.
He does.
In the south.
My teeth wouldn't take.
Yeah, not mine.
Okay.
Have some more candy, Amanda.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that
Got a whole bag.
would help in any of our decisions as far as like our concerns about repairs down the road and.
Does,
I think it would help me give a clear recommendation for sure, because I still have some outstanding misgivings,
the
considerations.
cash on hand map that you laid out for every year, it says state grant partial, straight grant partial. Is that because the state dollars pay us back over
The 7-year period?
7 years?
Correct. So the, the ComEd inverter grant of 180 grand, give or take, off the top of my head. That's a 1 year. The federal 630,000, give or take, that's a 1 year. The 1.05.
Can you say the 180 was the 1 year-ish, and then what was the second one you just said?
So the ComEd inverter
Yep,
of 180 is a 1 year. The federal 630 is a 1 year.
oh, okay,
The,
that's what it was.
the 1.02, 1.05, whatever the number is, from the state is a 7 year. And so as you move forward in, pick a year, 2026, 27, 28, 29, if you look at between the 145 or 150 in state grant you're gonna get each one of those years, plus the 40 or 50 grand that you're gonna have in electricity savings on your bill every year, you're gonna save about 200 grand. You're gonna revenue and decrease expenditures about 200 grand, somewhere 180 to 200. And so that's why this thing continues to have a more positive influence once you get to 2030. Then in years after 2030, then it's just your $40,000 or $45,000 in electrical savings.
Is it split up amongst 7 years evenly in the state?
That's my understanding. I believe that's what Scott explained.
The history scares me a little. Okay.
Onwards.
Yep, so you got some answers to get for us. I
Awesome.
look forward to those.
Of course.
The other thing that was on here that I think we just need at least a quick discussion on is the Northbrook functionality improvement
Mhm.
portion. You talked about, you know, we could do the security stuff without doing the more aesthetic and usefulness stuff. But you also said you do think that the number given was pretty high. So have we gone back and asked him, like, can we still gain some of that functionality at like half the cost?
So we actually had a meeting with a lot of the Northbrook office people last week, kind of kick some things around. We continue to try to figure out exactly how to make things better. And so we really want to have kind of a better game plan in place before we take it to them and say, okay, now what's this gonna cost, right? But, you know, if that number was, was 400,000 or 500,000, we should be able to, we will certainly be able to make the building more functional for far less than that. We're still kind of trying to figure out what that recommendation as a group is, to then take it and get it priced.
Okay. Cause I don't wanna give up on that chance, I mean, it is very weird in the front office, and it's weird that there's not a place to like have parent meetings, that Paula's office is kind of this weird in between. Like,
Yep.
I do agree, like, there needs to be better functionality, and I hate for us to spend and invest money in a way that's gonna still keep some of those areas less than ideal for function.
Yep, we're working on it.
Okay. And then, was that it for summer project for right now?
So when would we be making a decision on A, B, C, or
So
parts
if
of this, or all of it?
if everybody's good with what I'm going to go back and kind of refer to as the priority A things, as, you know, kind of Teresa shaved those off. If everybody's good with that, we'll have those as a next month approval. That way, we can get things ordered, we can start supply chain things, we can start moving forward. I would
Can
like,
you open that back up with the ABC?
Mm-hmm.
So then my question is, cause some of them on B are like still part of that, but with also something else, so if we approve A, but then part of it is affected by the other, is
So
that,
B is
does that make
only
sense?
the,
shouldn't
be.
be, none of those should be
Yeah, I was like,
connected.
which one are you talking
Yeah,
about?
none of those should be
under
connected.
Northbrook, the two Bs that are there are what we just talked about, that front entrance, exterior and office renovation functionality, and they're not quite ready for that to be rebid yet.
Okay,
So that shouldn't impact that, and the other Bs
so
are
they
the.
are all
roof and
standalone-ish.
So, I think we could very easily have, because once we take this kind of priority A group off, excuse me, then we would have a separate solar discussion, which would be the panels and the two roofs. Because the fifth grade roof is already a part of the priority A conversation. And then we would have a third conversation about the functionality of Northbrook.
And then just to like make things complicated again, so if we're considering all these big ticket things and we tabled like the camera type of system, because that was kind of like we haven't found the right price on what we're looking for that, is that correct? Like, do we need to keep that in mind when we're making decisions on B and C, or?
And the cameras is captured in here under priority A?
It is.
It
Cameras
is.
is captured in under priority A, even though I will be the one coordinating that, not Scott. But
Okay,
it's still in that price point.
I
But if you come
apologize,
back
I
and
didn't
say-
even,
I feel like the cameras for
I
your
missed
money
that
is
one
like the
little
best
line.
security option.
Cameras
no,
to me is
sorry, I missed
beneficial.
that line, I'm sorry, that's my fault.
No, all good.
I did volunteer Peter to put them all in for free over the weekend.
He was agreeable, right?
Okay, and for the time.
If you come back and say, you know what, solar, no thanks, new conversation, are we just delving right into pouring all the money into A, B, and C, or we're gonna stick with A, or is?
Well, I think A is off the, A, but A it sounds like we'll bring back for approval at the next meeting in and of itself as a package.
Okay.
And then
B
B
has
has
the
to be, the solar comes in at the B point to have the conversation there.
Yeah, then I think you start individually looking at B, like which one.
Cause the functionality we're not ready to
associated.
look at yet.
It was more like, if we're not spending it here, are we just gonna go spend it here?
No, I
all
don't
at
think
once?
it's,
Okay.
I think it's either, like, it's A or A plus B or A plus B plus
Okay.
C. Like, A has to,
A's.
is a done deal.
A's a done deal. Yep.
Not officially till next month, but
Agreed. Right,
But
right.
you
Unofficially.
could still do that, some of that C stuff without the solar.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. And so
Not
that's
to
what,
like confuse you, but you could do the gym door assembly and all of that without.
so because I had, as I looked around the room, I kind of had 7 nodding heads. The priority A stuff, that's not even a conversation. We're just gonna approve it next month and roll, okay? So then the outstanding conversations are solar and it's Northbrook functionality. Those are our
Yeah.
2 outstanding conversations. Does that
Mhm.
sound good
Agree.
to everybody?
Yep.
And I not only am curious to know what your team comes back for recommendations on that Northbrook front thing, I also, as cool as some of that stuff looked like with the front hiding the gutters and some of that, I just don't know, like, I did like that he said, okay, we could bring the window down so you had better visibility to the outside. Okay, that to me is more of a security thing. But I don't know that like burying the gutter and putting
It's a
in that
priority.
cool sidewalk thingy out front is as much of a priority. So even within that chunk of money, it might be nice to kind of see that broke out and go yes, no to some
Yep.
of the other things
Well,
there.
and just question too, like, if we have the camera system that we maybe want or that works in the way that we want it to, is it a better security thing to have the lower window, because then we don't need people seeing in, I don't know, like, you can see it both ways, like some
Yeah,
of
I'm
that
feeling
I thought
like
it
if
was
we're
a-
buying these expensive cameras, why do I
I
have
thought
to
it
put
was
in
a
expensive
one-way.
windows?
Well, because not everybody can see out. Like if there was a situation and people got in a fight outside the front of the thing, not everyone's gonna have the login to pull up the camera logs and be able to watch those.
Oh, I guess the ones at Lincoln are on all the time.
Yeah, there's
Like-
cameras on all
Like
the
there's a
tables.
big monitor in the
Screen,
front
yeah.
office.
It's all gonna depend on how if they're
Decide the
wireless,
functionality.
if they're, our servers, if they're someone else's servers, it's all gonna just depend on a lot of that stuff. But I think when he said it for that one, it was like a two-way, like we'd be able to see out so they could see who was standing there
Right.
and not
Oh, okay.
necessarily so they could see
I didn't
in.
hear that.
But that was my understanding anyhow. But yeah, I mean, and that's probably not a super huge expense, but I think it's important for us to take a look at what's included in that chunk of money. Cause as cool as that like concrete level thing would be for people to sit around on, I don't
I have half a hand in the car if you want some.
Half a hand.
Yeah.
have a ham.
In your car?
Yeah.
I like ham.
But you have
We're all just like hungry.
Oh, bring it in.
Snack.
Yeah, go
I
get
didn't have
it.
dinner.
We got some plastic
I thought
forks, we
that
can
might
get
be a
through
little
it.
weird, but now that we're eating
I didn't have
cookies-
dinner.
I'm so hungry. Did
I didn't have
raisins
dinner.
count? Raisins are like
I
fruit.
do. I can go get it. It's delicious. In the crock pot.
Okay.
Ham sounds really good all of a sudden
Anna's in a
now.
crock pot?
What's wrong with you, Amanda?
It's an early Thanksgiving.
I've been gone since 5:30 this morning.
Alright, so is everyone comfortable with where we sit on next steps for the summer project list? Okay. We're getting kinda late. Board conference.
Yeah, just an opportunity to see if anybody needed anything. The one of the things that we talked about is maybe the possibility of being in a different hotel next year. And so, if you have any thought or feedback, please don't hesitate to let me know or share with the group. Just
Was
wanna
it
make
boring? Did you have
I was
no fun
happy
with
It was
me?
it was terrible.
I
It was
enjoyed
the
all
most-
the activities.
It
I was
was the
happy with the
most
hotel.
boring
We were
thing
really
ever.
sad we had no fun without Amanda.
That's
We
what I
had no
heard. I just
fun.
wanted you to verify.
Yeah.
If these two were there,
The
it would've
people
been
from the
super fun.
boat were asking about you.
Yeah.
My
wasn't-
friends were gonna be there.
It wasn't too hard to get across to the other, and I liked, cause we were kind of in the middle then of like already being closer to the other stuff too. I don't know, I like, hotel seemed really nice.
I'm gonna need
Compared.
somebody to go with me next year because Kristen, when I needed to go for ice cream, she was my girl.
Hey, I
Well,
love ice
It's
cream
a
more than
good
anything
thing
in the
that
whole
I
world.
How was your date?
But didn't get to go because
I
I,
would've
bought
went.
my ticket based on the fact that you were going at the same time, and then you just went off to the metro, so you were not
That's
on
because
my
I couldn't
list.
get it, I wasn't riding a bus.
I'm just saying.
Did you buy a bus ticket?
No, I bought the
Oh, I was like-
Amtrak for
And
$40.
they,
Oh, yeah.
they were making
She
me
told
take the
me
bus
that
back.
she was taking it. We were gonna go in together. Well, lo and behold, she just up and left, and
Yeah. Oh, God.
we can go eat
So
ice cream with somebody else.
I said the hotel thing, and I don't think that I just said it might be interesting to look at prices of them. There are so many right there. Embassy Low, Fairmont, Sheridan, Hyatt, Madison. They're all literally right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the cost is, and maybe what some of the amenities are. If anyone's got breakfast or something, I don't know. But just take a look at it and see. I think we narrowed in on that based on loyalty points many a year ago. For who was in charge at
Breakfast
the time.
included is clutch for me.
And that's
Kristen
Nada
did a
right now.
switcheroo.
So the
Yeah, I had, did anybody else have any issues with
Kristen got to get a new room each day.
Yeah, I had to switch
Lucky
rooms
you.
each day and.
This last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were given the room 1708, and we went up into the hallway, and there literally was no room 1708.
Woo!
And so I went back down to the desk, and I'm like, there's no room. She's like, oh, that was supposed to be a 6.
Oh, my bad.
I've never had that before.
We had a few weird issues too, but you know,
All
not deal breakers, but just exploration. We aren't narrowed in. Somebody thought that we had to keep them. Was it you who were telling me that? Who was telling me that? Thought that we had to keep the rooms that we had.
No, because I was on the 33rd floor last year.
No, not the rooms. I mean the hotel that we had.
Nope.
Anyhow,
We can go wherever you want.
Was it you?
We can go wherever
I
you
was like, I
want.
had a conversation with somebody saying we thought because you were saying the person that you knew said that they thought that you had to
That
take
it
the
was like a
hotel they gave
lottery
you.
system. And
Yeah,
they just
I'm like,
gave
no.
you the-
No, it is a
wherever we want.
lottery system. More of first come, first serve.
My
Okay,
sister-in-law
see,
was
not
6
crazy.
blocks away though, so just keep that in mind. They don't, the high school doesn't really go to them.
And this year they were going to.
Yeah, so my sister-in-law went and then the super and the new soon-to-be super, and they were booked 6 blocks away, so I don't.
I've been with boards that like to be on the west side of Michigan Avenue,
Mhm.
so they never have to worry about parade stuff. They're already on the west side come
It
Saturday.
did take 4 hours and 15 minutes for the kids to get their Chick-fil-A.
Oh my
Because
Yeah,
it's free.
They did not get their.
Everything shuts down from 4 o'clock
8
on.
raisins and oatmeal
So.
cookies, my favorite.
Anyhow, we will just keep it in mind. If there's any other feedback that you had from experiencing it, I absolutely was so excited that we had like sponsored dinners and events, and in the past the district would put out the money for like a board dinner, which isn't a bad thing. Like it's, you know, once a year opportunity to be together, but the fact that we were able to attend several very nice events without costing the district anything was great. Thank you, Brad, for
You're welcome.
arranging all of
That's
that.
my pleasure.
It was really,
My pleasure.
it was neat, and it was a neat way to meet a lot. This is the first time I feel like I met people from like everywhere and had really great conversations with a lot of
districts
people.
and-
So
Yeah.
great networking opportunity too.
I will, over the course of about the next 2 weeks, do your reimbursements. And so if you have anything, any Ubers or food costs or anything that you need to get to me before I do that, please just email them to.
Train ticket I didn't use.
Okay, I really want to keep moving. We're 8:30. District report card.
It is by law that we have to notify you that it's done. Tyler emailed you the link, and so if you have any questions on it, let me know.
And we are sitting well.
Yeah.
In most areas, we are outpacing the state. Summative was 1 exemplary, 2 commendable, although you always have to take that with a grain of salt because they change the qualifications for summative designations every year. So you can't be like, oh, we moved up to this one because it's based on completely different things every time. But the fact that we don't have anybody down at that bottom is great. And our scores are doing well,
We're
and our
doing really
spending
well.
is low, and
We're doing really well.
yeah.
We have a lot to be proud and thankful
Kudos.
for.
All right, we do need an executive session this evening. If we could have a motion for that.
What's the purpose?
Employment contracts.
Okay.
Correct, Brad? Is that the only one, or do we have anything
I
else?
thought there was something else on
Yeah,
that.
we would need it, and it would need to be for possible litigation
Okay.
as well.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning, I'm reading the whole thing so we don't get in trouble. Concerning salary schedules for 1 or more classes of employees, for the discussion of litigation, when action
There it
against
is.
affecting or on behalf of the school board has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when a school board finds an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the meetings of the closed session.
Go Holly.
Well, I got it there.
Good
Do
job.
we have a second?
A second.
And roll call.
Rapp,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Cos,
Yes.
Kane.
Yep.
Comitas, Landers.
Yes.
Yeah, shut the camera off while we go into exec.
What do you think?
Potty break.
I already did that.
I think we should go in for the tribunal.
Schrader,
Yes.
Beats,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Comitas,
Yes.
Kane.
Yep.
Cos.
Yes.
And then we can have motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn. I made every other motion tonight.
And second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Time to go
opposed?
home.
Peace out.
And again, thank you to Socorro for lining up your little
Yeah,
take